Today we're going to talk about is feedback. Why is it so easy to give advice but not to take advice? So the whole thing is when we see people kind of like we see what's the obvious solution to a problem and we tell them, but to them it's not easy. But that happens also to us.
Absolutely.
It happens to us because a lot of people give us advice because it seems so obvious to them, but how come we don't take it? Why is it that? Because sometimes when people give advice, it's kind of like admitting they knew the answer and we didn't.
Yeah. So it's like once you have that admittance, it kind of like attacks the ego a little bit because there's that sense of emotion of thinking like, oh, well, now that they've said it, it's so obvious. How come I didn't come up with it? And so I think there's a little bit that you end up beating yourself up for it.
Yeah, it's that whole thing. It's like, I want to find out for myself. But is that like a really good strategy? It's like somebody's telling you, don't touch the stove. But you're like, I want to find out for myself. So you want to touch the stove. So the good thing is to take the advice and then not do it. But the thing is, you have to, when you take somebody else's advice, there's a kind of sense of saying, you know what, this person knows the answer better than I do. And therefore, sometimes people translate that as this person is better than I am because he saw it and I didn't.
Right. But instead of looking at it and seeing who the advice is coming from, is this someone who is successful in this area and they know what they're talking about and they're seeing something that clearly I'm not. Either I'm looking at the trees and they're looking at the forest or vice versa.
So give me an example. Like what would be one? Well, the one that comes into mind right away, like say if you're asking how to make money, you need to ask somebody that makes good amount of money and you can see it. Like the results are there. So if they give you some financial advice or some business advice, you're going to have more weight on their opinion than to somebody that doesn't.
Correct. So like if you go to them with an idea and they shoot it down, it just means that they know more in that area than you do, and therefore you need to go back to the drawing board. And there's nothing wrong with that. So just because your idea wasn't maybe a good one doesn't necessarily mean that you're not capable of coming up with a good one. It's like going back, re-strategizing, and then go back to that person.
Or you can ask why isn't it a good one? And they can tell you might not agree with them, but they are successful for a reason.
No, but that was a great example or thing. So ask why. So that's more feedback. In what area? And they might say, well, the idea is good, but if you do it down this route, it's not going to end well, or the outcome isn't going to be what you actually desire. So if you want to keep that concept, maybe take this route instead.
Well, it's like some people, like when we went to the gym and they asked, how'd you lose so much weight? How'd you lose? Because I lost like 50 pounds, right? And I tell them, and then they don't take the advice.
No.
And I'm all like, they saw the before and after, but they don't. But what I did is I saw people in shape and I asked them. And then after they said what they did, I just did what they did. I didn't ask questions because obviously they have the result, unless they were lying to me. But whatever advice that they gave,
keeping those secrets.
Exactly. So it's like, so I'm not saying that some people don't have good advice and they don't take their own advice. They make the advice, I'm not taking their own advice. There's a lot of people like that. But it's harder to find the true wisdom in that person. So when some people have like good advice, it's really, do they have the results? Then I'll be like, then I'm more inclined to believe them.
Sure. And then I noticed too that when people would come up to you at the gym and ask you that, and you would tell them, you know, what you did and how it worked and some adjustments that you made right away, a lot of them were like, oh, I couldn't do that. Well, so immediately they just like cut themselves short and already were like, oh, I'm not capable.
Like I'm going to find a new way to do it. So the whole thing is that when people, I find it funny that some people, when somebody does something well, say, well, he's just lucky, or it's genetics, or it's something. They discount the person.
Your effort meant nothing. Right. It was just you were fortunate enough at the right place at the right time, and the weight just fell off.
So when they do it, they're lucky. But if they do something wrong, it wasn't their fault. It was unlucky. So when they do it, they're lucky, and when they fail, they say, "Oh, it wasn't that I was unlucky. It's just I'm badass." Or like when they're successful, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
So when they do, like when somebody else does something right, It's because they were gifted, they're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
But if they do something right, they say they're badass.
Yeah,
but when they do something wrong, oh, they're dumb. They're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the person does something wrong, oh, it was bad luck. It's always something. How convenient. No, that's the whole thing. The feedback is very promotional, self-promotional when you do something right, and when you do something wrong, you have all these excuses.
Mm-hmm. These justifications.
Right. So the whole thing with feedback is when people criticize you, you can look at it as criticism, or you can look at it as something that uncovers your deficiencies. Now that
like a
doesn't
learning
feel
experience.
good. Right. So the goal, the whole thing is to grow is to know your deficiencies and accept them. So that's why it's hard to take feedback in the first place. But a growth mindset looks at feedback as constructive.
Yes. Well, it's almost like the cliche saying, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you have discrepancies or flaws or deficiencies within yourself and you don't address them, you're not as strong as you think you are. Right. But if you do address them, you're only going to become stronger.
Yeah, but it's not easy for a lot of people.
Oh, no, it's not an easy task, but it's worth it.
So a lot of people, when people say things, they take it as criticism, or do you take it as them consulting you? Now, consulting and criticism, it's the same thing, but one is welcome and the other one's not. So I think that a lot of people get a lot of advice, a lot of feedback that's unsolicited. So when you actually sit down and be like, I want to be better at this, it's kind of like an awareness of that you're admitting that you don't really have what it takes to do what you need to do. You need help. So that's the first step. Mm-hmm. The first step is awareness that you're deficient.
Right.
And a lot of people don't like to do that. So when somebody tells you what your problem is in the solution, it's not welcome because you didn't ask. I didn't ask you for any help. So it's unsolicited. That's why it's another reason that feedback is not taken.
It's like, don't tell me what's wrong with me because I already know. And if I already know, then I'm doing what I want or whatever.
Yeah. So there's this fantasy about judgment. It's like, that's how we stay alive, through our judgments every single time. So when they go to the gym, it's a judgment-free zone, whatever. Everybody is...
We're all looking at other people and
everybody's
like,
checking everybody out.
I don't want to look like that. I do want to look like that. I want to be more like that. Ooh, I like that outfit. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that just can't... When they say no judgment, is the negative. But when you tell somebody, hey, you look good. Oh, that's a nice outfit. That's actually judgment.
Yeah.
So it's judging them and be like, oh, I like your outfit. I like your this. But it says no judgment zone. So that should go out the window? Does that not count? Oh, no. Positive judgment is good. Negative, I go, no. It's how the person views the judgment that makes all the difference. If somebody tells you something, you can look at it as consulting, or you can look at it as criticism.
Right.
And what happens is that a lot of people don't like to be highlighted their flaws. But that's what the growth mindset, people that want to change their perspective, they're like, I want to know my flaws so I can change them, because they know that it's not permanent.
Right.
Right.
Everything's adjustable.
The whole thing is, the solution is, if you have to filter out people depending on their results. It's basically like, do you want to make the money that he has? Do you want to be healthy as she is or as he is? Then you can follow their advice. Now, people give advice and probably not good teachers, but you need to kind of sort that out.
You need to be a good student.
Yes.
That's ideal.
You have to listen of all the possibilities of being wrong. So if you can't take any advice, that means there's nothing wrong with you. You're a 10. You're perfect. Yeah, whatever. That doesn't make sense. So we can all say, well, there's something wrong with us, but when we talk to somebody and they tell us, especially if they're doing better than us in that field, how can you take that feedback? Well, you have to take it in. You have to admit it's okay that you're at a lower level and you want to get to a higher level, and taking advice from somebody that's higher than you, it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're less valuable. You're just looking at information. Like gravity is gravity. You can't say gravity is bad and you can't say gravity is good. It just is. So when you're at a certain level, it's not bad or good. It just is. You want to get better? Then you're going to have to level up, but it's not a bad thing. So it's like, if you get on the scale, that's a measurement of gravity. Maybe you're too heavy. You can think of it as a bad thing, but maybe you want to be lighter, and you can think of it as a good thing. But the scale is not telling bad or good. It's just information.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I
It's
look
not
at it.
judging you. It's just letting you know where you're standing.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.